Shares of Google are rising again this morning. This after yesterday's 6% gain. Reporting the information saying that Meta is considering using Google's tensor processing units in its data centers in 2027. Now, Google rising, NVIDIA pulling back on that news. Joining us right now is Josey, Citi senior internet analyst. Good morning to you. It feels like every other day one of these models is, leapfrogging the other. In the moment right now, Google's Gemini seems to be ahead. Anthropic just came out with its own large language model. So let's break apart the news. There's the model issue, which a lot of people are excited about. And then there's this other news on the chip front. Which is bigger to you?
And then you have search, by the way, growing. So maybe that's even a TAM expander. So you've got the model doing better. You've got the chip potentially being used to sell off premises. And then you have or search doing better. Which one's bigger? I think the model drives much of what Google's business is, both on the search and the Google Cloud side. And so as of now, we're actually pretty excited about what's going on within Gemini, the Gemini family of products that are happening right now.
So when you think about the model issue, and this is something we've been talking about now for weeks, if not months on end, I imagine, Gemini is now ahead. As I said, Anthropic just came out with its own model yesterday. I imagine we'll get a new ChatGPT at some point soon. How do you see the issue either of memory persistence or other things? What is the wall, the garden? You had someone like Mark Benioff say that he spent the last 2 years using ChatGPT practically every day. Now he says he's using Gemini. Does that mean that the user is just going to jump to whatever the best model is at any one moment? Or do you think that there's a bigger moat around these businesses?
Andrew, I think there's a bigger moat around these businesses. There's only several model companies that have the size and scale that are offering these types of services. Google's one of them, OpenAI with ChatGPT another. You mentioned Claude earlier, and there's several others, Grok and what Meta's doing with Llama, of course. But really, Google's ethos and what they have been historically is primarily a search consumer internet company. Yes, Google Cloud's doing better. Gemini is now giving them more of a leg up on the search business. And I think a big unlock from our perspective post 3Q earnings is that search is now growing sequentially. And so not only are people using Google more often, they're doing it in a way where they're getting the answers right away. And then you have Google Cloud, which is, delivering backlog of growth of $50+ billion on a sequential basis. And so I think from a Google perspective, look, at the end of the day, the majority of cash flows come from the core advertising business, primarily driven by search. I think Gemini gives you that gigantic, really continued strength in that business. And now, not only are they fighting back, they're on the front foot to a certain extent from a competitive perspective there. To be clear, it always takes a while for consumers to sort of change habits. And that's what's been so fascinating with OpenAI and ChatGPT and the rise there and the 800 million weekly active users. And so, competition's growing. There's only a handful of companies with a vertically integrated stack with the cloud. Google's certainly one of them, OpenAI being another. And consumers will migrate to the best experience, but also use multiple experiences.
Well,
and we've
Ron,
seen that across
here's the
the
thing
web.
that I always thought.
Yeah.
I thought from day one, this should be Google's to take, to be honest with you, because look, I'm a Gmail user. There's hundreds of millions of people who use Gmail, Calendar, all those applications. It should know the most about you, assuming that you opt in and all of those things. Therefore, it should be able to have the most personalized information in terms of what it's bringing back to you. Having said that, at least for the past couple of years, it's felt like ChatGPT has done a better job of that.
I don't disagree with you. It was theirs to take, and I think they were a little surprised if we go back about 2.5 years or so with what was happening and so what has happened. Answer search is now an answers engine, and Google is now, I think, seeing actually queries reaccelerate in terms of overall growth, and that's across their AI overviews, AI mode, and now Gemini. And frankly, not to switch the topics, but then where we started, we have a whole new business that's now in this next level or next phase of growth, and that's their cloud platform. And so you have a lot of things happening here within Google that I think that's to be excited about.
When you think about the chip piece of it, not only are we seeing investors get excited about Google because of this potential deal with Meta, but you look at NVIDIA's stock and it's down on the back of this news. Does that make sense to you longer term?
Yeah, and from a chip perspective, I'm certainly not the expert there, but frankly, it's a gigantic market, and one of the things that Google does have from a benefit perspective, they've got the model, they've got the chip, they've got a delivery mechanism with Google Cloud, and now if they're opening it up to more, it's pretty interesting. One thing that seems to be for sure here is that the demand side continues to grow. And so when you see that backlog growing as fast as it is, when you see other companies in this industry growing as fast as they are, whether that be being chips or via the cloud perspective, and I'll throw Amazon in there as well, there's a huge opportunity for that to continue. So we
If
believe that this demand can continue here.
if you had to rank the companies that you cover right now, buy, to hold, to sell, what are they? Mag 7.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. So I cover, thankfully, three of the Mag 7, and frankly, in the shorter term here, Google is firing on all cylinders. It's actually fascinating that Amazon, which delivered a phenomenal quarter in our perspective, is now trading at a cheaper multiple, maybe first time ever, than Google is, and we still like Meta quite a bit here. Meta, we need to know a little bit more about their plans, about their strategy. I think we're going to get that here in 26. But the core ranking recommendations engine at Meta, in addition to their usage, continues to grow. And that gives them a gigantic moat on their core business too. So frankly, here in the shorter term, all three are performing really well. And so I think I'd put it in that order in the short term, but officially Meta remains our top pick.